The single contract we found in the family safe destroyed our entire future. When I first pulled the handle of that heavy iron safe, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. A few bonds, maybe some jewelry, the kind of things our family kept hidden away like treasure. I never thought I'd find a paper that would choke me harder than any rope around my neck. The safe was our shrine, our untouchable box of wealth and power. That's what we always believed. But that day, when I cracked it open, what I found inside wasn't treasure. It was a curse. An old folder lay there, covered in dust, stamped with the faded seal of our company, Lee Group Holdings, our family name, a name the whole city knew, wealth, power, prestige. But in that moment, the letters on the seal looked rotten, like they'd been written on mold. I pulled out a contract, one thin sheet of paper, yet it cut deeper than any blade could. 51% of Lee Group Holdings shall be transferred to the silent partner, John K. Maxwell. The words blurred for a second. My throat tightened. John K. Maxwell. The name hit me like a fist to the chest. We never had a Maxwell in our family, never even mentioned the name. But there it was, in black ink, my father's signature below it. My father, the man who built this empire, the man who preached unity and loyalty every damn day of his life, he had signed away our future to a stranger. I laughed. I actually laughed as my stomach twisted. That's what satire feels like. You laugh while you're breaking apart inside. My brother walked in just then. "What's that?" he asked, half bored. I shoved the paper at him. He read the first line, and the color drained from his face. "This is fake. It has to be fake. Dad would never—" I cut him off with another laugh, sharper this time. "Dad? Dad never told us the truth about anything. He sold us fairy tales while he sold the company out from under us." My brother's hands shook as he gripped the contract, ready to tear it to pieces. I grabbed his wrist. "Don't. Destroying the paper won't destroy the truth." The door creaked open. Our mother stepped in, calm, elegant, like always. "What's all this noise?" she asked. Her eyes darted to the contract. She snatched it from my hand and read it once, then smiled. "Yes," she smiled. "So, you found it?" she said. My brother and I froze. "You knew?" I whispered. "Of course I knew," she replied softly. "You were children. You still are. This business is too heavy for you. There was no other choice but to make that deal with Maxwell." My chest tightened. To save the business, or to sell us off like livestock? She didn't answer. She slid the paper back into the folder, tucked it neatly inside the safe, and closed the heavy door. Then she looked me straight in the eye. "Some things can only be understood when you grow up. And you, my son, you are still a child." That sentence pierced deeper than any knife. For a second I wanted to cry. Instead, a manic laugh ripped out of my throat. The absurdity, the betrayal, it was almost poetic. That was the moment I understood. The contract didn't just strip us of money, it stripped us of trust, of family, of everything we thought was ours. And I swore to myself that night, no matter the cost, I would uncover the whole truth. The night after we found the contract, the entire family gathered in the dining room. It wasn't a dinner, it was a trial. The long mahogany table became our battlefield, the chandelier above us swaying like it wanted to hear every lie, every accusation. My brother slammed the contract down in the center. "Explain this," he barked. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from rage he could barely control. My sister, always the perfectionist, raised an eyebrow and sipped her wine as if the paper on the table was nothing more than a bad stock report. "It's meaningless," she said. "Old paper, maybe even forged." "Forged?" I snapped. "That's Father's signature. Look at it. The curve of the L, The pressure at the end. You can't fake the way his hand trembled when he signed under pressure. The room fell into silence for a moment. Everyone stared at the contract like it might explode. Then my uncle, our so-called family advisor, who never missed an opportunity to remind us he'd been with the company from the start, leaned back and smirked. If Maxwell owns 51%, then he owns the company. Maybe it's time you children learned the meaning of power. His words sliced through the air. My sister finally lost her calm facade. "So you knew about this?" she hissed. He shrugged, swirling his drink. "Business requires sacrifices. Your father understood that. You should be grateful the company still exists at all." Grateful. The word made bile rise in my throat. "Grateful?" I shouted. "We've been living a lie. Our entire empire belongs to a stranger, and you want us to thank him for it?" Mother spoke at last. Calm, measured, like a judge delivering a sentence. "Enough. The contract is real. Your father made the deal. And Maxwell has been silent for a reason. He doesn't want the family destroyed. But now that you've discovered it, you're tearing each other apart faster than he ever could." My brother stood so suddenly, his chair scraped across the marble floor. "You knew all along. You're the one who let him do this. You—" Her hand shot up, sharp as a blade. "Watch your tongue. Without me, this family would have collapsed years ago. Your father trusted Maxwell more than he trusted you. That should tell you something." The silence that followed was worse than any scream. For the first time, I looked at each of them, not as family, but as suspects. Who benefited most from this deal? Who whispered in father's ear? Who stood to gain when the empire was no longer ours? And then I noticed something. My sister's hand resting on the table, tapping ever so slightly. Nervous, guilty. She never tapped when she was calm. "It was you," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "What nonsense is this now? You pushed him into this. You convinced him Maxwell was the solution. That's why you're so calm, because you knew. You've always known." The table erupted. Shouts, denials, insults. My uncle roaring, my brother cursing, my mother ordering silence. The contract sat between us like a live grenade, its words burning into our eyes. And in that storm of voices, one thing became clear. The real danger wasn't Maxwell. The real danger was us. Because the moment we touched that contract, the family turned into enemies. The following morning, the house felt different. The air itself was heavy, like the walls had absorbed every argument from the night before. Even the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway sounded accusatory, counting down the seconds until the next explosion. I walked into the study. The contract wasn't where we'd left it. Panic rushed through me. That paper wasn't just ink and signatures. It was the fuse of our destruction. Without it, we couldn't even prove to ourselves what was real. I tore through drawers, flipped books off shelves. Nothing. Then I noticed the safe in the corner. The same safe father had always said was for emergencies only. The dial was still warm. Someone had touched it recently. Footsteps behind me. My brother. "Looking for something?" he asked, his arms crossed, his eyes colder than I'd ever seen them. "Where is it?" I demanded. "Safe. For now." I stepped closer. "You think hiding it will save us?" "No," he said. "I think hiding it will buy me time." Buy me time, not us. The distinction wasn't lost on me. Before I could reply, my sister entered, flawless as ever, not a strand of hair out of place, but her eyes betrayed her, bloodshot, sleepless. "Both of you are pathetic," she said, "arguing over scraps like beggars. Do you really think Maxwell will wait quietly while we bicker? He'll come knocking, and when he does, one of us will have to answer." "And who do you suggest?" I asked. She smiled thinly. Me? Of course. I'm the only one who can negotiate with him, the only one with the composure. You two are liabilities. My brother laughed bitterly. Negotiate? With a man who already owns us? That's not negotiation, that's begging. Her smile faded, just for a second. I caught it, that flicker. She wasn't confident, she was terrified. Then Uncle appeared in the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, like he'd been listening the whole time. "Children," he said softly, almost kindly, "do you not see? You're trying to fix a deal that was never meant to be undone. Your father sealed our fate decades ago. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you'll stop tearing each other apart." "And you?" I shot back. "What's your part in all this?" He tilted his head. "My part? To ensure survival, even if survival means kneeling." Mother's voice floated from the hall before any of us could answer. "Maxwell has already contacted me." Every muscle in my body froze. We rushed into the dining room where she stood, phone in hand. Her expression was unreadable, carved from marble. "He knows you found the contract. He says it's time for a meeting." Silence gripped us again, the kind that suffocates. "When?" I whispered. "Tonight." The chandelier above flickered, as if even the electricity feared what was coming. And in that moment I realized our family wasn't preparing for a meeting. We were preparing for an execution. Night arrived too quickly. The hours before the meeting dragged and yet disappeared all at once, like sand slipping through desperate fingers. None of us spoke much. The house, usually filled with the hum of business calls and servants shuffling about, was dead quiet. When the black sedan pulled into the driveway, my chest tightened. The headlights cut across the walls of the living room, stretching shadows into monsters. Mother stood at the door to greet him, regal as ever, like she was welcoming royalty instead of a man holding our family's throat in his hand. Maxwell stepped inside. He wasn't what I expected. No suit, no entourage, just a plain gray coat, polished shoes, and a face that looked ordinary. That was the terrifying part. Power never needed decoration. It simply existed. He looked around the room, his gaze slow and deliberate, like he was taking inventory of livestock. Finally, his eyes landed on the contract in Mother's hand. "So," he said, voice calm, steady, "the children found the truth." My brother clenched his fists. "You tricked him. You tricked our father." Maxwell's smile was thin, humorless. "Your father came to me. Desperate men don't need tricking. They need rescuing. I gave him that. In return, he gave me permanence." "Permanence?" I asked. "Control," he replied simply. My sister, ever the negotiator, stepped forward. "Then why stay silent all these years? Why not take your control when father died?" Maxwell's eyes lingered on her, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something darker. "Because silence is a stronger chain than force. You all grew up believing you were powerful. That belief kept you docile, predictable. But now you're fractured, and fractured families destroy themselves. I don't have to lift a finger." Uncle coughed nervously, breaking the tension. "Mr. Maxwell, surely we can discuss terms. There must be—" "Terms?" Maxwell cut him off, his voice suddenly sharp. "There are no terms. There is only reality. I own you, your name, your wealth, your empire, everything, and soon I'll decide what to do with it." The words hit like a blade across the throat. Mother didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, eyes steel. "If you've come to end us, then do it. But know this, we will not kneel." For the first time, Maxwell laughed, a low, chilling laugh. Pride, the last currency of the powerless. He stepped closer to me, his presence suffocating. His eyes locked on mine, and for a terrifying moment it felt like he could read every secret, every betrayal running through my veins. "You," he whispered, "you see it, don't you? The cracks, the rot. They'll destroy themselves long before I destroy them." And just like that, he turned and walked out. No threats, no conditions, just certainty. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house like a coffin lid sealing. No one spoke, no one moved, because we all knew Maxwell was right. After Maxwell left, the house did not breathe again. His presence lingered in the walls, in our veins, like a poison. No one went to bed that night. Instead, we scattered into corners, pacing, whispering, glaring. The silence between us was louder than any scream. By morning, suspicion had set in like rot. My brother accused first. His voice cracked across the breakfast table like a whip. "You knew," he said, pointing at my sister. "You knew about Maxwell years ago. Don't deny it." She froze with her teacup halfway to her lips. Her hands were steady, but her eyes flickered. Betrayal or guilt, I couldn't tell. "You think I would hide something like that? From all of you?" "Yes," he spat, "because it gave you leverage. That's why you've been so calm. That's why you're always one step ahead." Her laugh was sharp, cruel. "Leverage? Do you hear yourself? I had nothing to gain by keeping this secret, unless you're projecting, unless you're the one who's known." The accusation twisted the room like a knife. Mother looked between them, silent but calculating, as though tallying points in a game. I tried to cut in, but the words stuck in my throat, because deep down I wasn't sure either of them was innocent. Later, I found Uncle in the study, whispering into the phone. When he noticed me, he snapped it shut so fast the wood-paneled room seemed to shake with the sound. "Who was that?" I demanded. "No one important," he replied, too quickly. "Maxwell?" His silence answered for him. The walls were closing in. Every face in the family was a mask, every word a possible lie. I started seeing betrayals where none existed, or maybe where all of them did. That evening I caught my sister again. She was at Father's desk, rifling through drawers. When I confronted her, she didn't flinch. "Looking for answers," she said coldly. "If you had half a brain, you'd be doing the same." But I noticed what she slipped into her pocket, a small leather notebook, Father's handwriting spilling from its pages. I reached for it, but she slammed the drawer shut and turned on me. "You think you can protect this family? You can't even protect yourself. Maxwell already chose. He chose the weak link." "Who?" I whispered. Her smile was razor thin. "You'll see." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway sounded like betrayal, every shadow like a knife. And for the first time in my life, I asked myself the question I had been avoiding. Which would happen first, Maxwell's victory or our murder of each other? By the sixth night, paranoia was no longer a shadow in the corners of the house. It was the air we breathed. The mansion itself felt alive, listening, recording, amplifying every whisper until it sounded like betrayal. No one trusted footsteps in the hallway anymore. We listened for the rhythm of each other's tread, suspicious of every pause, every hesitation. Mother tried to hold morning meetings in the dining room, as if routine could glue us back together. But it only turned the table into a stage for lies. My brother began locking his bedroom door. My sister had taken to carrying Father's notebook everywhere, clutching it like scripture. Uncle spent hours in the study with the curtains drawn, the smell of his cigar smoke drifting under the door like a warning. And me? I couldn't stop imagining their faces as masks. Behind every glance was calculation. Behind every smile, a plot. One evening, I heard laughter coming from the parlor. Not joyful laughter, something brittle, manic. I crept closer. It was my sister, sitting alone with a glass of wine. She was laughing at nothing, or perhaps at everything. "We're all rats," she whispered, staring into the fire. "The contract was the trap, and now we chew at each other until only bones are left." When she noticed me, her expression snapped back into elegance. "Don't lurk," she said. "It makes you look guilty." Later that night, my brother pulled me aside, his eyes wide, fevered. "She's working with Maxwell," he hissed. "I know it. I heard her on the phone. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone. Too calm, too rehearsed. She's selling us out." But hadn't I thought the same of him? The seed planted itself in my mind, and once suspicion takes root, it grows wild. At dinner, I found myself watching the way he cut his steak, as if the steady rhythm of his knife was Morse code to an invisible ally. My sister excused herself early, clutching the notebook. I imagined pages torn out, slipped under Maxwell's door. Uncle toasted to family survival, but his eyes darted everywhere but ours. Mother was the calmest of all, too calm, as if she'd already chosen who to sacrifice when the time came. That night, I locked my own door for the first time. But even locked doors couldn't protect me from the voices, not the ones whispering down the hall, nor the ones in my own head, because now the question wasn't who will betray us. The question was who already has. By the seventh day, paranoia stopped being invisible. It finally took form. It began with a scream. I jolted awake in the middle of the night, the echo tearing through the halls like glass shattering. I ran toward the sound, heart pounding, every step echoing against the marble floor. The library door was wide open. My brother stood frozen inside, his face drained of blood. On the floor lay Father's notebook, pages ripped out, scattered like dead leaves. And the safe in the corner? Open, empty. My sister burst in moments later, hair disheveled, eyes wild. "Where is it?" she cried. "Where's the rest of it?" "Don't look at me!" my brother shouted, his voice raw. "You've been clutching that book like your life depended on it. What did you do?" "I didn't touch it," she snapped, though her hands were trembling. I stared at the safe. It hadn't been forced open. The lock was clean, deliberate. Someone knew the combination. Someone Father must have trusted enough to share it with. Uncle arrived last, his robe trailing behind him like a judge arriving at the gallows. He surveyed the chaos with unsettling calm. "Well," he murmured, "it seems the game has begun." "What game?" I demanded. He lit a cigar, inhaled, and exhaled slowly. "The one where one of us isn't who they claim to be." Mother appeared in the doorway, her shadow stretching across the floor. Her eyes moved from the notebook's scattered pages to each of our faces. She said nothing, only stepped inside and locked the library door behind her. "No one leaves until we settle this," she said. Her voice was so steady it made my skin crawl. The room filled with accusations. My brother swore my sister had hidden the missing pages. She fired back that he was lying to cover his own theft. Uncle smirked, fanning the flames, while Mother watched like a silent judge, waiting for the guilty to reveal themselves. And me? I felt the walls closing in. My eyes darted to the window, half expecting Maxwell himself to be watching from the shadows. But then I realized something more terrifying. This wasn't Maxwell's doing. This was us. Our paranoia had evolved into action. Someone had made the first move, stolen the missing pages, and tipped the scales into chaos. The lights flickered. My sister gasped. My brother cursed. And in the sudden dimness, I understood the truth. Maxwell hadn't come to destroy us. He didn't need to. We were already doing it for him. The eighth night broke what little sanity remained. The house no longer felt like a home. It felt like a labyrinth designed to keep us circling our own paranoia until we collapsed. It started with the food. At dinner, my brother pushed away his plate, eyes narrowing. "Who cooked this?" he demanded. The servants had been dismissed days ago. Mother claimed privacy was more important now, so it was only us. My sister had prepared the meal. "Eat it," she said calmly, too calmly. "No," he snapped. "Not until you taste it first." The room froze. Even the candles seemed to burn quieter. Slowly, my sister lifted her fork, speared a piece of meat, and raised it to her lips. Her hand trembled just slightly, but we all saw it. She chewed, swallowed, and smiled, though her eyes glistened like glass about to crack. "Satisfied?" But my brother shoved his plate away, untouched. That night, I heard him vomiting in the bathroom anyway. No one had forced him to eat, but his paranoia had. He believed he was poisoned, and belief was enough to make him sick. Later, as I wandered the halls, I found Mother sitting in the darkened drawing room. No lights, no sound, just her figure against the window. "He'll take you one by one," she whispered, not looking at me. "Not with guns, not with contracts, with fear, until you all tear each other apart. And when it's done, I'll decide who survives." Her reflection in the glass was colder than Maxwell's voice had ever been. Uncle grew stranger, too. He began leaving notes, cryptic warnings slipped under doors, scrawled in his uneven hand. "Don't trust her. He knows. The walls have ears." The problem was, he never signed them. We never knew which her or which he. And maybe that was the point. By dawn, the house had become a chessboard, every room a trap, every word a test. And when I passed by the library, I noticed something new. The missing pages from Father's notebook, taped to the wall in jagged strips. Phrases circled in red ink, words scratched out violently. But the handwriting wasn't Father's, it was my sister's. When she saw me staring, she ripped the pages down, her composure cracking for the first time. "Stay out of this," she hissed. But her eyes betrayed her. They weren't eyes of someone plotting against Maxwell. They were eyes of someone who had already made a deal. And for the first time, I wondered if the enemy wasn't just in the house. Maybe the enemy was the house itself, twisting us, feeding us, using Maxwell as a phantom mask. Because every time I blinked, I swore the walls were listening. By the ninth night, the paranoia finally spilled over into blood. It began with smoke. I woke coughing, the acrid sting clawing my lungs. The hallway was thick with it, curling under doors, climbing the staircase like a living thing. Someone screamed, my sister's voice, high, sharp, desperate. I stumbled through the haze toward the library. Flames licked the curtains, devouring them with greedy crackles. The safe stood open again, empty. The notebook was gone. My brother charged in with a blanket, trying to smother the fire. His face was streaked with soot, eyes wild. "Who did this?" he shouted over the roar. "Who said it?" But the truth was obvious. Fires don't start themselves. Mother stood in the doorway, her silhouette glowing orange against the flames. She didn't move to help. She only watched, her calmness terrifying. "It was bound to happen," she said softly. "Destruction is the only language we understand now." The fire spread faster than reason. We dragged water buckets, tore down fabric, choked on ash. By the time we smothered it, the library was blackened ruins. The shelves warped, the portraits melted, the air thick with death. And then we realized Uncle was missing. We found him at the bottom of the grand staircase, his body twisted, neck bent at an impossible angle. The banister above was broken, splintered, as if he'd been shoved. "He slipped," my sister whispered, but her voice shook too much to be convincing. My brother rounded on her. "You were with him last. You argued in the study. Everyone heard. Admit it." "Don't you dare," she spat back, though her hands were still trembling from the fire. I looked at Mother. She hadn't moved from the doorway. Her face was unreadable, almost expectant. That was when I understood. It didn't matter who lit the fire or who pushed Uncle. The line had been crossed. The house was no longer just suffocating us with suspicion, it had become a battleground. From now on, survival meant sabotage. Trust was extinct. And somewhere in the smoke and ashes, I swore I heard laughter. Not Maxwell's, not any of ours. Something deeper, buried in the bones of the house itself. As if the mansion had been waiting years for this night. And now it was finally feeding. By the 10th night, Maxwell's shadow returned, not with thunder, but with whispers. We hadn't invited him back. No one dared. Yet somehow he knew. He always knew. The fire, Uncle's broken body, the missing pages. He must have smelled the blood in the air. Predators always do. The front door creaked open without a knock. Maxwell stepped inside, not a speck of soot or ash on his coat, as though the chaos of the house could never stain him. He moved slowly, deliberately, eyes grazing over the blackened library walls, the smoke-stained ceiling. "So," he said softly, "the house has finally started to speak." My brother clenched his fists, rage boiling over. "You did this. You lit the fire. You pushed him." Maxwell tilted his head, amused. "Why waste my energy when you're all so eager to do it yourselves? I gave you a spark. You made the inferno." My sister's voice cracked, high and brittle. "Liar! You've been pulling strings from the start. Those missing pages, you wanted us to turn on each other." He smiled thinly. "Wanted? Number? Anticipated? Yes. Humans are predictable when cornered. The greater the fear, the sharper the knife. And in this house, every one of you came armed long before I arrived." Mother rose from her chair, regal even amid ruin. "You mean to strip us of everything, but we won't kneel." Maxwell's gaze softened, not with pity, but with victory. "You already have. You bowed the moment you signed away trust in each other. Families fall not because of contracts, but because love was never stronger than ambition. I simply provided the mirror." He produced something from his coat pocket, the missing notebook pages, edges burned but words intact. He laid them gently on the ruined dining table. "Your father begged for salvation. He wrote it in his own hand. He gave me power, not as a thief, but as an heir. I am what he wanted all along, a caretaker who would not flinch at the cost. My brother lunged, but Maxwell didn't move. He didn't need to. The weight of his certainty crushed the room more than any weapon. "Go ahead," Maxwell said softly. "Strike me. Prove me right. Show the world what this family truly is." And for a terrifying moment I realized the truth. Every scream, every betrayal, every spark of violence had been Maxwell's orchestra. We were not his enemies, we were his instruments. And now, with Uncle dead, the library burned, and the contract undisputed, he had played the final note. The empire was his. And the worst part? We handed it to him ourselves. By the 11th night, the mansion was no longer a house. It was a carcass, hollowed out by suspicion, gnawed on by greed. The smoke from the fire still clung to the walls, a permanent scar. Uncle's death lay unspoken in every corner, yet his absence screamed louder than his voice ever had. But Maxwell remained, not as a guest, never that. As if he'd always belonged, as if the house itself had been waiting for him to reclaim it. He didn't shout, didn't threaten. He simply existed, calm as stone, while the rest of us unraveled. My brother was the first to break. His rage finally boiled into action. One morning, I woke to find the study doors bolted, my brother inside with a bottle of whiskey and father's revolver. He shouted through the wood that none of us would take the company from him. Not Maxwell, not mother, not my sister. His voice cracked between sobs and curses. Mother ordered me to leave him alone, but her eyes, cold, shimmering like steel, were fixed on the revolver. Not her son. Meanwhile, my sister moved like a ghost. She no longer laughed, no longer argued. She only wrote in the margins of father's notebook, scribbling in feverish ink. I caught fragments: corruption, sacrifice, blood equals power. She would slam it shut whenever I drew near. And Maxwell? He wandered the halls in silence, his footsteps as steady as a heartbeat. Servants, neighbors, even business associates no longer came. He had isolated us completely, turned the mansion into his personal stage. At dinner, he finally spoke. "Do you see how natural it feels?" he asked, his voice almost tender. "This collapse. You call it tragedy. I call it order. Families like yours rot because of excess. I simply trimmed the fat." My sister snapped. She threw her glass at him, shards scattering like diamonds across the marble. "You think you've won? You think you can erase us?" Maxwell didn't even blink. "You erase yourselves. I only watch." The silence afterward was worse than the glass breaking, because deep down we all knew he was right. That night I walked the halls alone, my footsteps echoing against the hollow walls, and I wondered, not whether we could stop him. That was impossible now. I wondered whether Maxwell had ever been a man at all, because no man destroys without lifting a hand. No man feeds on suspicion like it's wine. But the house seemed to breathe with him, as though he and the mansion were one, watching, waiting, feeding. And I realized with a chill that froze my blood, Maxwell didn't just inherit our empire, he inherited us. The 12th and final act was not an explosion, it was a suffocation. By then the house had shrunk to a coffin. The walls seemed to lean in, the air itself heavy, poisoned by everything left unsaid. My brother had vanished into the study days ago. No sound came from behind the door, no curses, no drunken rants, only silence. When at last we forced it open, the revolver lay on the floor. He was slumped over father's desk, face buried in those papers as if he'd been trying to sign one last deal. His ink-stained hand was stiff, frozen mid-sentence. My sister followed soon after. The notebook she had filled with madness sat open beside her bed, words trailing off in lines that no longer made sense, half prayers, half curses. I found her still, eyes wide open, as though staring down something only she could see. Mother tried to hold on. She walked the halls in her pearls and her fading perfume, muttering to herself about order, about legacy, about how the world still owed us respect. But in the dining hall I found her alone at the head of the long table, whispering to the empty chairs, as if we were all still gathered around her. She would not answer when I spoke. She simply raised her glass to invisible guests, smiling with teeth that no longer remembered joy. And Maxwell. Maxwell never left. He sat in father's armchair, calm as a priest, watching me with those unblinking eyes. "You survived," he said softly. "That makes you different, stronger. The house chose you." I wanted to scream, to strike him, to demand what he had done to us. But the truth was unbearable. He hadn't done anything. Not with his hands, not with weapons. He had simply been there, breathing in our greed, feeding on our fractures, giving just enough of a push when the cracks began to split. It was us who destroyed ourselves. Now only I remain. I wander these halls, hearing echoes of laughter that curdle into screams. The contracts, the money, the empire, what do they matter when the bloodline is ash? Sometimes, late at night, I think of leaving, just walking out the iron gates, never looking back. But each time I reach the door, I feel the weight of the house pressing against me. The air thickens, the walls breathe, and Maxwell's voice whispers behind me, "You belong here." And I turn back, because the truth is, he's right. The house has swallowed me too. And one day, when some curious hand opens that old family safe again, they won't find a contract. They'll find me, waiting, watching, smiling like Maxwell did.